When you stand in a city like Paris and look around, you might notice something special. There are not many very tall buildings or skyscrapers reaching high into the sky. Now imagine a city like New York in America. There you see many tall buildings of glass and steel. This big difference is not because Europe cannot build high. It is because Europe made a clear choice not to. Europe wanted its cities to look different. This choice came from long history and deep culture. Many European cities are very old. They have buildings from hundreds of years ago. People wanted to keep these old places safe. They did not want new, very tall buildings to stand near them. This decision shows a special way of thinking about how cities should grow. This story will explain why Europe mostly said no to skyscrapers. We will travel through time to see how this happened. First, we learn about the history that made Europe follow a different path. Then, we look at big disagreements in cities where people argued about building tall. You will see how places like Paris and London made their own building choices. Finally, we talk about today. New challenges are making Europe think again about tall buildings. Problems like needing more homes, protecting nature, and cities wanting to be strong in the world's economy are making Europe consider building higher. Europe must decide. Will it keep its old look? Or will it build new, tall structures to meet modern needs? This book explores these big questions about Europe's cities. 2. A different start. In the 19th century, cities in America and Europe began to grow in very different ways. This led them down separate paths, especially concerning tall buildings. In America, cities like Chicago were relatively new. After the Great Fire in 1871, Chicago had a chance to rebuild much of itself. It was almost like a blank page. New York City also had a simple grid plan for its streets. This meant builders in America could create new structures easily. There were not many old rules or historical buildings in their way. So they could build tall structures like the first steel-framed buildings. These towers became symbols of America's new ideas and strong economy. European cities, however, were very different. Places like Paris and London were extremely old, some more than 1,000 years old. Their streets often followed patterns from the Middle Ages. These cities had many old, important buildings and long, complex histories. Laws about owning property were also very old and detailed. For example, in Europe, owning land did not always mean you could change it completely. There were strong rules about keeping old buildings safe. People also cared a lot about how new buildings looked next to old ones. They wanted new buildings to fit in, not stand out too much or be too tall. The cost of land also played a part. In American cities, land in the center became very expensive because there was not much space left. This made building upwards a good economic choice. But in European cities, Businesses and homes were spread out more across the city. This meant land in the center did not always push people to build very tall buildings. Culturally, American cities were building new identities for a young country. Skyscrapers showed progress and power. But European cities already had their identities, built over centuries. New buildings had to respect this history. City leaders in Europe also had more power to control how cities grew. They saw themselves as protectors of the city's past. Because of these reasons, European cities grew in a slower, more careful way. Building tall was not the main idea. Instead, they focused on keeping their historical look and feel. This basic difference in how cities grew led to the very different skylines we see today. 3. After the war. After World War II, many European cities were in ruins. Bombs had destroyed large parts of London, Berlin, Warsaw, and other places. This destruction meant cities had a big choice to make. They could build new, modern cities like those growing in America. Or they could rebuild their old historic centers. Europe chose to rebuild its past. This decision was very important. It meant European cities would not become places full of tall, new buildings like American cities. Instead, they would try to look as they did before the war. This was a clear message that Europe wanted to keep its history. A powerful example of this was Warsaw, the capital city of Poland. During the war, over 90% of its old city center was destroyed. The old buildings were just piles of stones. But Polish people decided not to build a new modern city. They wanted to bring their old city back to life. Architects and citizens worked together. They used old drawings, photos, and even people's memories. They rebuilt the historic streets and buildings, stone by stone. It was like putting a puzzle back together. This was a big act of hope and a way to remember their culture. Other cities did similar things. Dresden, a city in Germany, carefully rebuilt its beautiful old buildings. London also rebuilt its financial area, keeping the old street layout. They made new buildings, but they made them fit with the older parts. There were strong reasons for this choice. People felt a deep need to save their culture after the war. Rebuilding old city centers was a way to say that their history was strong and important. Building new American-style skyscrapers would have felt like letting the war win by destroying their past for good. Money also played a part. Programs like the Marshall Plan helped Europe rebuild. This money was often for restoring what was lost, not for building completely new things. Also, European countries needed to house people and restart businesses quickly. It was easier to do this by rebuilding familiar areas. American cities, on the other hand, had more money for big new projects. European cities focused on getting people back to work and housing them. They preferred building lower, human-sized homes and offices. This big choice after the war made European skylines look very different from American ones. 4. A big mistake. In the 1960s and 1970s, Brussels, a city in Belgium, faced a big change. It became the important center for new European organizations, like the European Union. This meant that suddenly many new offices, hotels, and meeting places were needed very quickly. However, Brussels did not have many rules about how new buildings should look or where they could be built. This allowed people to build new, modern towers very fast, often without thinking about the city's history or its old, beautiful areas. This fast and uncontrolled way of building was later called Brusselization. It meant that many old, important buildings were simply pulled down. In their place, tall, new office blocks made of glass and concrete appeared. These new buildings often looked generic and did not fit with the old city's unique style or human scale. One sad example was the destruction of the Maison du Pomp in 1965. This building, designed by the famous architect Victor Horta, was a masterpiece of Art Nouveau. Its loss showed many people how little care was being taken. The visual impact of these changes was very jarring. Brussels's old city center, once full of harmonious street views and traditional architecture, was now filled with modern towers. These towers ignored the established building heights and street patterns. The city's skyline, which had developed slowly over centuries, was suddenly dominated by structures that looked out of place, as if dropped in from another city. People reacted strongly. Citizens groups protested loudly against these developments. Architects and writers used the term Brusselization as a warning about bad city planning. People across Europe watched what was happening in Brussels with concern. They saw it as a clear example of how not to develop a historic city. Because of this big mistake, cities all over Europe decided to act. They did not want their own historic centers to be destroyed in the same way. In the 1970s, many European cities made new, strict laws for building. These laws often set firm height limits for new buildings in old city centers. They also made it a rule that new buildings had to fit well with the style and look of the existing old architecture. Planning authorities received more power to reject building plans that did not respect the city's heritage. This strong reaction from the Brusselization event helped protect the unique character of European cities for many years to come. 5. The Paris story. In the 1960s, a big change began in Paris. The French president, Charles de Gaulle, wanted Paris to be a very modern city. He wanted it to be like New York and London, with many tall buildings for new businesses. Paris needed modern office spaces, but its old streets were not made for this. So in 1969, the city approved a new tower. This was the Tour Montparnasse. It was 210 meters tall. It became France's tallest building and the only skyscraper inside the old city of Paris. It was built in the heart of the left bank, close to famous places like the Luxembourg Gardens. The tower looked very modern. It was a dark, plain block that did not try to match the old Paris style. When the tower was built in the early 1970s, many Parisians saw it for the first time. They did not like it. It was too big and looked out of place. People called it the eyesore of Paris or the Black Tooth. From many famous sites like the Eiffel Tower or Sacré-Cœur, the Tour Montparnasse could be seen. It spoiled the beautiful old views that people loved. Also, about 25,000 people worked there every day. This made the nearby metro station and streets too busy. The city's old roads could not handle so much traffic. People were very angry. They protested and asked for no more tall buildings in central Paris. In 1977, the Paris City Council made a strict new law. It said that new buildings in the city center could not be taller than 37 meters, which is about 12 floors. This law stopped any more skyscrapers from being built there. But Paris still needed modern office space. So, city planners found a smart idea. They created a new business area called La Défense. It is just outside Paris in a western suburb called Courbevoie. La Défense was planned as a separate place for modern architecture. Here, tall buildings could be built freely. It was connected to central Paris by fast trains. La Défense grew in the 1980s and 90s. It now has many tall buildings and is an important business area in Europe, with over 180,000 workers. Big international companies have offices there. This separation helped Paris keep its historic look while also growing its economy. However, La Défense does not have the same lively feel as central Paris. Its streets are mostly for cars going to offices, not for people walking and living. Other cities in Europe chose different ways to protect their history. For example, Rome protects its past completely. Rome has many ancient ruins under its streets. If they build tall, they might find more ruins, which would stop construction. Rome has very strict rules. The Italian Ministry of Cultural Heritage and UNESCO help make sure old sites are safe. New buildings must respect the city's old style. This helps Rome keep its unique historic look, but it also means housing is very expensive. 6. The London story. London is different from many other European cities. For a long time, London also did not want many tall buildings. But something important happened in the 1980s that changed this idea. On October 27, 1986, London's financial rules changed a lot. People called this the Big Bang. This change made London a very important place for world finance and banks. New banks and global companies needed modern offices. They wanted very big, open spaces for hundreds of workers and new computer systems. Old buildings in the historic center of London could not offer these large spaces. So, the city faced a clear choice: either build taller buildings or lose its place as a top financial center. It decided to build upward. The first big project for tall buildings was Canary Wharf. This was a large area in East London, far from the historic city. Old docks were there before. Developers built a cluster of skyscrapers there, like those in New York.
Canary Wharf became a new financial district. It helped London keep its place as a global money center. Because Canary Wharf was not in the very old part of the city, people did not protest as strongly at first. However, when plans for tall buildings closer to the ancient City of London appeared, many battles began. Groups that protect old buildings did not like these ideas. For example, a plan for a very tall Millennium Tower was stopped after strong protests. This showed that new tall buildings could be built, but only if they had very good design. They also had to show clear economic benefits for the city and not spoil important historic views. One famous skyscraper that changed things was the Gherkin, also known as 30 St. Mary Axe. It was finished in 2003. This building had a special curved glass shape. It was designed to be good for the environment and look unique in the city. Its building process was complex, needing approval from many different authorities. Another very famous tall building is the Shard. It was finished in 2012. It is one of the tallest buildings in Western Europe. Many people did not like the Shard at first because it was so big and changed the famous skyline. But supporters said London needed more tall buildings for homes and offices. They argued it would help with the city's housing problems and reduce urban spread. The Shard's approval showed that even very large buildings could be built if they had excellent design and brought important benefits. London's choice to build tall was different from many other European cities. But it helped London stay a strong global city. Frankfurt, a city in Germany, also chose to build many tall buildings on purpose. After World War II, much of Frankfurt was destroyed. Unlike some other cities that rebuilt old buildings, Frankfurt decided to build modern and tall to become a strong financial center. They planned specific areas for skyscrapers. Buildings like the Commerzbank Tower showed that tall buildings could be well designed and good for the environment. Frankfurt's tall buildings helped its economy grow and made it a major business center in Europe. Both London and Frankfurt show that some European cities chose to build upward for economic reasons. This was a different path from many other historic European cities. 7. New tall buildings. Today, Europe is changing.
New problems are making cities think about tall buildings again. There is a big housing crisis across many European cities. Many people need homes, but there are not enough places to live. In cities like Dublin and Amsterdam, homes are very expensive. Teachers, nurses, and other essential workers sometimes cannot afford to live in the cities where they work. More people are moving to cities for jobs and city life, but houses are often low and small. Families are also smaller now, with more single people, so they need more individual homes. The old ways of building simply cannot make enough new homes for everyone quickly. Also, cities want to protect the environment. They need to be greener and use less energy. Climate change is a big problem, and cities must reduce their pollution. Cars make a lot of emissions. If more people live closer together in tall buildings, they can walk or use public transport like trains and trams more often. This helps reduce car use. Tall buildings can also be very good at saving energy for heating and cooling, which helps the environment. They use less land to house many people, saving important natural areas. Third, cities want to be strong in the global economy. They want to attract new businesses, especially in finance and technology. These big, modern companies need large offices with flexible spaces and the latest technology. Old European buildings are often not big or suitable enough for these needs. Cities like London built tall buildings, for example in Canary Wharf, to keep big banks and international businesses. Other European cities now face the same choice: build tall to compete or risk losing important businesses to other places in the world. But the new tall buildings in Europe are different from old ones. They are not like the gray, square towers from many years ago. That people disliked. Today, architects make beautiful buildings that look good with the city around them. They think about how the building will appear and how it will work for people. For example, the Shard in London is a tall, pointed glass building that seems to melt into the sky. Many new designs include green spaces or gardens high up and public areas for everyone to enjoy. These modern tall buildings often focus on saving energy and using new green ideas. Some buildings use natural air to stay cool and bring in a lot of light, reducing the need for electricity. They are built to be good for the people inside and for the planet. You are a professional documentary film narrator. With a standard American accent, narrate the provided story. Enunciate words clearly, ensuring they are easily understandable for non-native English students. Speak at a measured pace and unhurried pace. Make your tone and delivery natural and engaging. Your tone must absolutely be really serious. Make no additional comments. Begin narrating immediately. Examples like the Commerzbank Tower in Frankfurt show how tall buildings can be very green. Milan also has new areas with tall, green buildings that mix homes and offices. These modern towers help cities grow up, not out into the countryside. This helps protect natural land and make cities more sustainable for the future. Europe is finding a new way to build tall in a smart and beautiful way. 8. The final choice. Europe now stands at a very important point. For a long time, European cities chose not to build tall buildings. They wanted to keep their old looks and history. This was a clear choice, different from many other places in the world. But today, Europe faces new and difficult problems. These problems make cities think about building tall again. One big problem is housing. Many cities do not have enough homes for all the people who want to live there. This makes housing very expensive.
People, even those who work important jobs like teachers or nurses, find it hard to live in the city. Cities like Dublin and Amsterdam feel this problem strongly. They need more homes, and building taller can create many homes in a small area. Another big challenge is the environment. Cities want to be greener and use less energy. They need to reduce pollution and fight climate change. Tall buildings, when built well, can be very good for the environment. They can use less energy per person and help cities use less land, which stops cities from growing too wide. Copenhagen is a city that tries to be very green, and it is looking at how tall buildings can help. Economic needs are also changing. Today's businesses, especially in finance and technology, need large, modern office spaces. Old European buildings often cannot offer this. Cities need to be competitive in the world economy. If they do not offer modern spaces, businesses might go to other cities. London is an example of a European city that built tall to stay strong in global finance. So, Europe has a clear but difficult choice. Should it stay the same, protecting its old beauty, perhaps becoming like a museum for history? Or should it adapt and build new, taller structures to meet modern needs and stay alive and strong in the future? This decision is not easy. It means choosing between keeping the past exactly as it is or changing to live in today's world. The future look and feel of European cities depend on this choice. If they do not change, they might become less important over time. But if they change, they must do it carefully to keep their special charm. The real question is, can European cities build tall buildings in a way that still respects their long history and unique character?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.